Joined now by former Vancouver Canucks defenseman, TSN hockey analyst, Mr. Frank Corrado, who has managed to stay dry during Toronto's flooding.
So, I guess that's an appropriate question from you, because once a winter, you guys will get some snow. And I think people over here, if you have friends out west in Vancouver, you say, "Oh, how'd it go with the snow? How's your snow tires? You guys can't drive in that." Ha ha ha. And then we get one rainfall that wasn't even that bad, and our whole city is flooded for, a number of reasons that no one ever wants to take the blame for. And then we get the text from Maddie Sekeres. "Hope you're staying dry out there, pal. Hope all is well."
Wow.
Just a little shot back, and it's well deserved.
No, it was not a shot back. It was genuine concern for you and your newborn twins and Miss Jessica.
You had visions of like the twins in a canoe and Frankie going down the street.
Scrolling through my timeline, and Lakeshore Boulevard looks like New Orleans during Katrina. So I'm sitting there going, "My God, like what are my people in Toronto dealing with here?"
No, we're good. I don't know if Drake's good, but we're good.
Yeah.
And here, I'm sitting there and I'm changing a diaper in my kitchen, and I got like a fist full of shit all over my hand. And my wife says to me, "Oh, Drake's house is flooded." I said, "Imagine that. Bridle path, Drake, he's dealing with sewage infested water in his house. We're up in Vaughan in the burbs in our tiny little house, and we're good." So, it's the little things. It's the little wins in life when you're covered in shit that make you feel good.
We're good, but you've got a fistful of shit in the kitchen?
Well, we have
diaper changer. He's the expert in diaper changing, but does one change diapers in the kitchen?
They're cleanable surfaces. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need to get into the logistics of my house, but basically there's a changing table in the girls' room, which is upstairs. The kitchen is like an open concept kind of thing. So there's like a kitchen, there's the seating area, there's the table, and there's like a little side area where we said, let's put something on the main floor so we don't have to trek up and down the stairs every time we have to change a diaper, which I don't know if you know this, Matt, is very often. So there we are. It's I will say, like, it's far from the food preparation area.
So, Frank.
Yeah.
I mean, you've heard the expression, you don't shit where you eat, right?
Apparently you do in our house.
Do you think Kendrick reached out to Drake about the house?
My. Okay, let's talk some hockey here, because between last week and the opening of this hit, we haven't done a lot of that with Frank.
It's true.
Late.
He distracts us.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Jake DeBrusk. He acknowledged a couple of trade requests in Boston, and it seemed like his name was forever on those trade boards, Frankie. What do you know about those situations, and would you be at all concerned as a Canucks fan or a Canuck that you're talking about a player who has wanted out in the past?
No, I wouldn't be concerned about that at all. And it's funny because, there were trade requests in the past, and then you would get the news that Jake DeBrusk has rescinded his trade request. And then that happened to coincide with a certain coach leaving the organization. So you always have to wonder, like, what is happening behind the scenes with that relationship that would lead to the player saying, I need to leave here. I want to play somewhere else. I don't think it has anything to do with, the character, the personality. I was doing a radio show here in Toronto, and we interviewed Jake DeBrusk, and I sent someone a message who works with Louis, because I don't know Louis, but I just said, if you're talking to him, please just tell him, like, we were blown away by the personality, the charisma, the amount of detail he was able to go into. Like, he blew us away with the interview. So I think he's, from just talking to him a little bit in that kind of platform, in that environment, I don't see anything that would be a red flag as far as, the character and personality. And the matter of asking for a trade, there's so many different reasons why that may happen for a player.
Well, there was a much publicized coaches feud there. Mm-hmm. Like, he and Cassidy didn't meld well, right?
I mean, so Cassidy leaves. All of a sudden, he doesn't want to get traded. I mean, you can do the math on that. But I think I think Jake DeBrusk, in the context of the Vancouver Canucks, I think Tocchet is hard on his players, but not in a way where it's going to go overboard and it's going to cause issues for the guy where he no longer wants to be there. I think he's hard with a purpose, and genuinely just wants to get the most out of his guys, and at the end of the day can still relate to these guys in such a way that he did with Phil Kessel in Pittsburgh. The way he was able to get Evgeny Malkin going, like as an assistant coach. Like I think he really, having that background, being able to lean on that relationship building goes a long way when it comes to trying to push your players.
It's funny. I mean, it's one thing to be a hard driving taskmaster and all of that as a head coach, but Tocchet seems to have found the, sort of tender side, the side where he can pull a guy aside, talk to him and let him know, I'm on your team. I'm in your corner, even if I am pushing you.
He and Brindamore look like Bond villains, but they're actually pretty cuddly. They are cuddly enough. They're not, you can't be full cuddly either, right, Frankie? You do need to have accountability still at your disposal. And I think they've walked that fine line, the two of them. But Rick Tocchet here in Vancouver, most notably.
So what's the best example that comes to mind for you guys when it comes to Rick Tocchet pushing a player the right way to succeed? Because right away, I think of Dakota Joshua. I think of last year training camp, kind of being hard on him. I can't remember exactly what the words were that he said in the media, but it wasn't pleasant. Like it wasn't exactly a glowing endorsement on Dakota Joshua, but the main thing behind it, the thing that was driving it, was that he knew there was more there. And he needed to find a way to get that out of him. So I think that's a great example of a player who, could give a little more physically, could give a little more offensively, could find another level as far as staying engaged and playing with that edge. And Tocchet, he walked that balance of, using that assistant coach kind of relationship building and the head coach kind of being firm and assertive and making sure that you demand a lot out of that player. I think it's a great mix to have. And that's what kind of sets him apart and makes him a Jack Adams Trophy winner.
When a guy's a second generation NHLer, does that change anything for him when he walks into a dressing room? Like, do other guys know who his dad is and sit there and wonder, okay, what we got here, given that it's a second generation guy? Like nepotism, are dressing rooms on the lookout for nepotism, basically?
Well, if you walk around like a D-bag, then yeah. I mean, if you walk around like you're God's gift to hockey, which you don't need to be a former NHLer's son to do that. Anyone can kind of do that. So, and I also think of, Louis DeBrusk was a hard-nosed, physical guy. I don't think, I don't want to speak for him, but I don't think he walked around like the game owed him anything. He kind of devoted a lot to the game. And if anything, he would have instilled that kind of attitude and mentality in Jake DeBrusk. So if anything, he got a great education in what it takes to, not take a day for granted in the NHL and, how hard it is to stay and to succeed in the NHL. I kind of go down the list of former NHLer sons who have played or are playing in the NHL today. Like I think of two right away. I think of Matthew and Brady Tkachuk. People can't say enough good things about those guys. One guy just won a Stanley Cup. One guy's a young captain on a team in Ottawa. I think, if anything, those guys have an advantage in the sense that they're well-trained, they're well-versed, they know the world, the NHL world, they know how things work, and they kind of have been, they've had a front row seat to all of that their entire lives. Think about the Sutters. I'm blanking on a few right now. But, Brandon Sutter, just unbelievable guy, unbelievable player. You know what I mean? So I don't think there's any kind of issues with him being a former NHLer son.
Yeah. And there was risk with both Sutter and Tkachuk in that Keith Tkachuk was a pretty big fan of Keith Tkachuk, and yet he spawned two kids that, you're right, get wonderful reviews by most people.
There were a number of teams going into that draft that were concerned with Matthew Tkachuk's skating and Matthew Tkachuk's influences, and how wrong that looks. And I forgive me, I asked the question in part because I got Constantino of the Sportsnet on the draft side of things talking about bloodlines during that draft because there were so many kids who had NHL connections who were drafted. a couple of weeks ago, and drafted high. And in some cases, NHL teams looked at it and went, "Oh, he's got NHL bloodlines. Let's pop him maybe sooner than a kid who wouldn't have had NHL bloodlines."
It can be tempting. Yesterday, we were asking who's on that line with the two of them, and they're not bound to be together legally, Pettersson and DeBrusk, but certainly it's the leaping off point. The general manager even name checked that when the signing occurred. Who's the most likely candidate to be the third guy on that line? Yesterday, we talked about Danton Heinen. We talked about Dakota Joshua and Connor Garland, and even Nils Höglander as a possibility. You can go off the board too, but who does somebody jump out as the right profile?
I think just right away, I think of wanting to have a guy who's a puck hound. I think of wanting to have a guy who's willing to use his feet, get involved, be the one that's willing to, I don't know, do a little bit of the greasy work.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess if you're thinking about how the lines are going to be constructed, Nils Höglander could be that for the Pettersson line. He could be that for the Miller line. Mixed with the skill that he does have, and hopefully the shooting percentage can stay high. I wonder if Danton Heinen can be that guy on that line. Like I know he's not going to be, he's not going to be as scrappy, maybe, but the feet are there. Like and if you're getting, if you think Tocchet can find a way to, get him to maybe be engaged as well and embrace that kind of role, I think there's a great opportunity for him there to do something like that. So I think when you have the shiny new toy, it's very tempting for the coach to see how it works. And for Pettersson, he's going to have two shiny new toys. He's going to have DeBrusk, and he might have Heinen. Heinen's not going to be as shiny as Jake DeBrusk, but you know what I mean. It's new. It's you want to get a look at it, and you almost want to eliminate all the excuses for the player, where you go out there and you say, I'm going to put you in the position to succeed. Meaning I'm going to put you with two really good players, and there's not going to be any excuses for you. And if it doesn't work, of course, you can try them lower in the lineup. Sometimes that works. But I would think, I would be thinking, let me see what Danton Heinen looks like there. But if the third line wasn't as good, like that line with Garland, Bluger, and Joshua, if that wasn't as good, I would love to see what Dakota Joshua looks like with Pettersson and Jake DeBrusk. I just think that would be very intriguing. But I guess you're breaking up a line that really works. But I would that's probably the one that intrigues me the most as to how good could that line be with Joshua being the puck hound, being the physical guy, doing a little bit of that greasy grunt work to get those guys the puck.
The backup goaltender resigned yesterday, Artur Silovs, on a 2-year deal. Demko, hate to say it, but at this stage of the game, injury prone, has missed games with injury several seasons now. What's the optimal, based on what you saw from Silovs in the playoffs, and let's face it, his playoff track record is bigger than his regular season track record. But for you, what would be the optimal way to divvy up the starts next season?
Okay.
To account for Thatcher's injury history, try and keep him fresh for the postseason, and get Silovs enough games so that you feel like you've got a young goaltender who's still developing and getting his necessary time.
I think Silovs needs to play like a substantial amount of games. Like Thatcher Demko falls into that category of the classic starter in the NHL, the workhorse guy, the stud number one goalie, but he can't be deployed like that because he gets hurt and it's too often, and you need him for the playoffs and you need him playing well at the right times. So that would mean, Artur Silovs probably has to play, 35 games. Like, is that, it seems like a lot for a young guy who's going to make the jump from the American League to the NHL. But if it can be like a 45, 35, and I know there's a couple of games kind of, miscellaneous there, I think that would go a long way for Demko in making sure that he's a little more fresh. And but that's also something that the coaching staff will have to make sure they're working into the schedule. Like, because if you thinking you're just going to run Demko and then Silovs is going to play your back-to-backs, you're probably looking at another another injury or two for Demko. Like we've just, we've seen it too many times, and hopefully he can stay healthy. Hopefully he can play a lot of games. But I think, if you're trying to push Demko into that 52 to 58 game range, I think you're asking for trouble. So now this is where Silovs, who gets a 2-year deal, who, that shows that the organization believes in him. It kind of goes from him getting thrust into the NHL now, and in my view, not being the cushioned backup like Stolarz would have been in Florida, like Brossoit would have been in Winnipeg. Now all of a sudden, you are kind of in a little bit of a tandem, whether the starting goalie is a tandem goalie or not. In order for it to work well and Demko to stay healthy, it has to be a little bit of a tandem. So I think thinking about it now, it's got to be 45, 35, and then your couple extra games. You see what shakes out there.
Is it amongst the best goalie tandems in the league if it's Silovs and Demko? I saw some conjecture about that online yesterday, and it made me think, there's got to be two veterans that certainly usurp a young up-and-comer and a veteran. But, of course, the veteran that you do have is a high-quality one. So where does the Vancouver goaltending rank if it is Silovs and Demko?
Well, I think just by default, having Demko, you're going to be in the top third, regardless of what regardless of what the tandem goalie is going to be. Like if you have that guy, you're already a really good duo. Now I'm trying to think, like Shesterkin and Jonathan Quick was really good last year. In theory, Varlamov and what the hell's his name, Sorokin. Like that in theory is a very good tandem, although it wasn't as good as it has been last year. So there are some that are already kind of existing. But here's the thing: like if Silovs comes in and he gives you a chance to win, every night that he's in the net, he doesn't let in soft leaky goals, and he probably plays at like a 9. I don't know if he plays at like a 908 to 912. We're talking about one of the best tandems in the league. And you have faith that Demko is always going to hold up his end of the bargain. And even just if you go through the Pacific, right? Like it would be a better tandem than Edmonton has. It would be a better tandem than Vegas has, than Calgary. Just going through the teams there in California. The Ducks tandem would actually be pretty good, but the team's no good. So that doesn't even matter. It's completely irrelevant, right? Better than the Kings, better than the Sharks. So yeah, it's if Silovs takes that next step sooner rather than later and doesn't stub his toe in that transition from AHL guy who gets the call up to now having to play in a tandem, we're going to be talking about that as probably one of the best in the league. But it'll be up to Silovs to make sure that he can actually absorb the workload to make sure that Demko isn't getting hurt.
And of course, Boston had to break up their tandem, right?
Boston had to break up their tandem. Hellebuck won the Jennings, although carrying the Lions' share. I mean, Bobrovsky and Stolarz in Florida. I know Mike McKenna of Daily Faceoff ranked the Islanders combo that Frank was talking about, the Russian Sorokin and Varlamov, number one heading into last season. Wasn't the greatest year for Sorokin, but I think it's absolutely amongst the best, particularly if it's the Silovs that we see in the postseason come back perhaps even stronger in this regular season, or at least more confident. Frank, chances off the rush. You do such a great job of breaking down the X's and O's and the actual way the game is played for us. Now, we know the Vancouver Canucks didn't generate a lot of them. We know a lot of that is system designed, right? That Rick Tocchet expects some things and is going to err on the defensive side of the puck. Don't turn it over once you get across your blue line. But Tocchet is somewhere in Vegas in a bunker doing a deep dive on how to generate more rush chances without giving up, or hoping not to give up anything defensively. How can they do it? How can the Canucks be a more dangerous team off the rush this coming season?
Okay, so the first thing that comes to mind is hopefully you play teams that aren't defensively responsible, and they give up the middle of the ice and they don't have a high forward, and you can just break out and attack off the rush. That is not the case in the NHL. Everyone, takes care of their own end to some degree. Some teams better than others, but so you can't rely on that on any given night. The first logical thing that comes to mind is the cleaner you are on your breakouts and the more you break out on your first attempt so that you don't have to slow things down, you don't have players getting bogged down and having to spend 15, 20 seconds trying to break a puck out and now getting going from a standstill. The more you can have clean kind of exits, the easier it's going to be for you to attack off the rush. But the other thing in regards to how, Tocchet likes to play, he always talks about the slash support player, right? Which is basically the winger. Let's say the puck is on the left side of the ice. So the winger who's on the right side of the ice, he has to bust his ass and go right across the ice, right through the middle and get to the left side of the ice to support, up the wall. Well, it's good to have that puck support. A lot of the time, what that does is that leads to a chip up the wall and then a chip in the zone. And now you've dumped it in and you're trying to chase it. So you're not attacking off the rush. What that is supposed to do is open up, a piece of ice basically underneath for the defenseman to get up in the play. The issue with that is not every defenseman is made for making plays off the rush. So sometimes a defenseman will get that puck. He gets to the red line. Maybe he's been on the ice for 40 seconds and, they didn't have the clean breakout, but they finally got it. And it's just a big rim around the boards. So now you've dumped it in again. So I guess, two parts of it for me. First part is breaking out on your first attempt more often than not is going to be very important. And then if you realize that happens and it's clean, you don't always have to live and die by the slash player coming across to support. You can spread things out because now if that player stays on his side of the ice and it's a clean puck and it's not a dirty puck means there's someone on you, it's bouncing, it's rolling, your back is facing the middle of the ice. If it's a clean puck, now you can attack in 1, 2, 3 chambers, right? We get the puck to the middle of the ice. Now that defenseman, remember the one I talked about, got that puck under and he did the big ring around? Well, now he's not doing that. He can actually join you and become the second wave of players. Like all this, it happens so quickly. And in theory, it sounds like it can work. All it takes is one bobbled puck. All it takes is, someone gets a stick on a puck in the offensive zone and doesn't allow you to break out. But that's the way, that's kind of the way you would attack better off the rush. And of course, then you have to know that you have the horses. You have to know you have guys that can make plays off the rush. You have to have guys that have some speed because they can't get caught, on the back check. Like there's a lot that goes into it, but breakouts, being organized through the neutral zone, having some speed. I mean, those are your 3 basic things that would allow you to attack better off the rush.
Absolutely love it. Clean puck, dirty puck, and chambers. Terms I have never heard about the game until this morning, Frank Corrado.
You get the you know what a chamber, like you get it.
Of course,
right?
I know the chamber. In soccer, they say run the channel, right? I hear you.
Yeah.
Chambers.
Before you go,
you stay in your chamber. Incidentally, I'm happy in my chamber.
I would love to stay in my chamber.
Please don't come in and intrude on my chamber.
Before you go, and you are allowed to get out of jail free card here if you've got no comment, don't remember, haven't seen the guy. We went down the rabbit hole a little bit on Anthony Romani from the North Bay Battalion yesterday. Just wondering how a guy who leads the OHL in goal scoring at 18 falls to the 6th round of the Vancouver Canucks. Did they find something there in the 6th round? Have you seen much of him? Do you remember noting him at all?
So what's funny? He actually played on the Toronto Junior Canadiens with my wife's cousin, who's an 05 as well. So I would have seen him. I probably would have seen this kid play since he was 12 years old. Like he's very, very skilled, which is wild. It's wild that you mentioned that name.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he's very.
You're telling me there's Toronto Italian hockey connections at play here with Romani?
I wasn't even playing the Italian card. I wasn't.
I can't tell you that I've met the kid or talked to the kid. Like the last time I would have watched him play, at a close level would have been maybe, minor midget. But I just remember him being always one of the more skilled players on the team. So I don't know. I feel like there's a good base of skill there, and it's been that way since I was watching the kid play since he was 12 years old. So it's not like he just came upon the skill recently. So I don't know. I don't know why he slips that low, but
he was passed over last year. It was his second time through. He's a late birthday in the draft calendar. Okay. And so he gets passed over, and then I guess he's tarred with that brush, if you will, going into his second draft, and he falls to the 6th round. It just seems like that's the kind of perfect 6th round draft pick where you're like, why is this guy still here? And the Canucks got him, so we'll watch him.
I think if you're going to take a risk on a couple things: size and skill. Everything in between you can kind of find. So nice to see him doing well. Yeah.
Corrado, Romani, you could ask him about any kid in the league with an Italian name, Blake, and I assure you.
I can't believe that's a crazy.
I wasn't even playing that card though. It wasn't like he's Italian. I should ask Corrado. That was not
like Corrado watches OHL games. Maybe he's seen this kid.
That was my calculus.
It turns out that there's a connection with the family.
You were close. You were thinking I watch OHL games, which I do, but I watch GTHL games apparently when there's family members.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Thanks, buddy.
Down the ranks, up the ladder with the one and only Frank Corrado. Thanks.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.